So looking at the technical etude for high school all-state, it is very difficult. So let's take note of a couple of things. First, it's in the key of G major. We do venture into some other keys as we go through there, most notably the key of B minor in the middle. It's marked allegro, which means quick. It's not too fast. So the tempo of 88 to 96 that's suggested is quite quick to manage everything you have to do. I would recommend playing it on the slower end of that spectrum, around 88, and making that the goal. Perhaps even going as slow as 84, although I would not go any slower than that, because then that makes other things difficult, like breathing. Because lots of the hardest technique is concentrated in the middle of the etude, it is conceivable that you could start at a fast tempo for the first 18 bars, then go at a slightly slower tempo until you get back to bar 32. Whatever you're going to do with this, tempo is the key, so I would recommend that you have a plan and that you stick to it. My best suggestion that I can give you is to play it all at one tempo that works, even if the overall tempo is a little bit at the slower end of the suggested spectrum. It's all 16th notes, so this is an excellent opportunity to practice in different rhythmic patterns to get these notes under your fingers. One of the patterns that I recommend is what I call the 1+3. Right? It helps us learn the notes in the patterns while grounding us towards the downbeat. So it works like this. If you look at measure 1, instead of playing, I would work and play one elongated note plus the other 3 as 16ths, like so. And I would go through and play every measure like that, especially the ones that I was having challenges with. When you get more comfortable with this and you want to have more fun with it, you can flip that around, and instead of doing 1 and 3, you can do 3 and 1, like so. And again, obviously you don't perform it that way, but it's a way that you can practice the technique that takes it out of how it's written on the page, and that makes it just a little bit more accessible to your fingers. This is how you're going to learn these tricky passages. And again, especially the ones that deal more with arpeggiations and skips rather than the ones that are like scales. There are very few dynamic indications. So what I would suggest is that you play it all at a comfortable mezzo forte. That dynamic will allow you a little bit of flexibility on the upper end so you can crescendo up to forte. It'll allow you some room on the lower end so you can decrescendo to a comfortable piano. But it'll allow you to achieve a good response of range and articulation as you do these different dynamic rises and falls. So again, right in the middle, mezzo forte is where I would start out, and I would maintain that for the most part all the way through. I would crescendo as I went up, and I would decrescendo a little bit as I went down. Biggest issue that everyone's going to have in this is with the breathing. And so everyone's going to have a slightly different approach to this based on what tempo they are ultimately able to play this at. All right? But other than the rest in bar 19 and 51 and the little tiny 16th note rest in 41 and the rest at the end of 31, you don't really have any places to breathe. So you've got two choices. You can play these long passages in a single breath. That's possible when you're ready to perform it, but in terms of practicing it at a slow tempo, you're never going to make it from measure 1 to 18 if you're working at quarter note equals 60, in your effort to learn it and get it faster. So we need to come up with some creative spots to breathe. All right? I would recommend the following spots. So let's mark these. In measure 5, after the F sharp, the very first note you play in the measure, after that note is completed, I would take a breath. The end of measure 13, at the very end of it, I would take a breath. The end of measure 23, after the F sharp in bar 36, so sort of like what we did in measure 5 there. Between bars 45 and 46, so at the end of 45 before you play 46. And then again at the end of 59 before you play 60. All of those spots are okay stops for just a quick sip of air. Obviously, in terms of working towards a performance on this, the fewer breaths that you can take, the less it's going to interrupt the flow of your technical playing, right? So all of these spots that I suggested to you will work for practice, but as you speed up the tempo and approach that 84, 88, maybe even as much as 92, you probably won't need to take them all. So it's totally fine if as you go through here and increase the tempo of this, you start to take those breaths out, right? This is why, again, tempo is going to be so important, because if you take it too quickly, you risk mismanaging the technique. If you take it slowly so you have control of the technique, then your air has to go farther and you have to take more breaths, right? So finding the sort of Goldilocks tempo where it's not too slow and not too fast is going to be critical. And again, my suggestion for you there is 84, 88. I think that those are good markings so that we can make the phrases with our breaths, but it's also not so fast that we get out of control with the fingers. One thing to note that's not contained in here, but along with this, because this places such demands on your breathing capacity, I would make sure that you are practicing your long tones in addition to this technical study. So even though long tones are sort of boring and they don't involve moving the fingers very much, they are going to increase your breath capacity, which will then make you better able to play these extended passages here. If you look towards the end, so measures like 54 through 57, the articulation changes a little bit here. So here we have tongue 1, slur 2, and tongue 1 again. If you're really running out of breath, and I say this to you having experienced this when I recorded it, and if you want to make a push to the end, you can cheat a little bit and slur the last 16th of the group to the first note of the next group. So in other words, you could revise that articulation just a little bit to be tongue 1, slur 2, slur 2. So you're always slurring the last 16th to the downbeat. You don't want to do that all the time, but it's a nice little quick thing that you can call on. It'll save you in a pinch, and you can slip it in to save time, to make yourself make the end of the phrase with a breath without the articulation interrupting it. Okay, so it's just a helpful strategy as you're approaching the end to get you there. Lots and lots of slow practice, ladies and gentlemen, on this is what's going to be key. With your metronome, observing the articulations, accurately planning out your breathing, and understanding that as the tempo increases, we can start to take some of those breaths that we suggested out. All right? Please email me with questions about this. This is a very difficult etude. I wish you all the best of luck with your preparation for it, and good luck on auditions.